So I got a job at Citigroup in customer service. And during the time that I was in customer service, I had some moments of doubt that I really wanted to be there or not, because the first time on the phone, I had someone yell at me. I mean, they were irate, and I am normally a gentle, sensitive soul. So to get yelled at by someone and not know what to do, it just scared me, and it just led me to cry. I did have a really great trainer, and he taught me how to navigate situations like that when you have customers that are irate, and you basically kill them with kindness. And so I learned that pretty early on, and the work got easier, but I knew it was something I did not want to be in forever. Um, there was a moment where I got a phone call, and I said, "Thank you for calling customer service. This is Bopa." And the person goes, "Oprah?" I was like, "No, Bopa." Oprah, like Oprah, like, are you really Oprah? And I'm like, no, 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 no. This is Bopa. And then they thought they were on the phone, probably getting surprised with some sort of like giveaway of some sort. And I just remember telling them, like, if I was Oprah, I would not be working here. I'd be somewhere else. Definitely not in customer service right now. But that was just so funny, because now people actually call me Bopra because of the life advice I give, the lived experience. It's just kind of funny how many years ago I was mistakenly called Oprah, because it rhymes with Bopa, Oprah. It goes hand in hand. But that was the highlight of my job there. And it also reminds me of like when Sully and I first started dating. So him and I started dating in 2004, and he would send flowers to the workplace. And this workplace is like very low key, but the flowers he was sending was like these extravagant big ones. And I just remember being so embarrassed. Like, bro, people don't even know I'm dating someone right now, and you're sending like these massive flowers. So he started to get the idea that I didn't really care for them, or nor did I take care of them when I brought them home. And then when I stopped getting those flowers, I kind of started missing them. And so he was like, "I'm not spending any money on things that you don't appreciate." And you know what? He was right. And so it's kind of funny now. I have this garden full of flowers that he planted for me, because he's like, "You can have unlimited flowers, and you don't have to pay for them besides the water, and you have to care for them." It's funny how the past brings the future into it. It's just so cool to see where it all started. And at City, a lot of things happened. And I remember also when I had my ectopic pregnancy, I was at that location in my work when I was experiencing a sharp pain that I did not know was happening. And I had a really wonderful manager that was understanding. And I remember feeling like I needed to hide that part of my life, because I wasn't married. And now that I look back, I wish I spoke to someone, but I didn't. I kept it to myself, and I recently spoke on it just last year, and it has helped me heal to understand that I really just didn't know what I was doing. And when situations arise, I figured it out, whether it was the right or the wrong thing. I did the best with what I knew and what I had. So that job also reminded me of layoffs. So we all got laid off. And at the time I was living with my parents, and also living with Sully too. I was going back and forth, and I didn't have a lot of bills. And so I remember watching the entire company all come together for the meeting. And I remember the crying that happened, and I didn't fully understand, because I didn't have that kind of responsibility of providing for a family, or even for myself. I wasn't having to do that necessarily. And I just remember looking around, and I remember just crying with them. But although I didn't feel that pain personally, I could feel the pain of everybody around me. Um, and in my mind, I mean, this is so crazy, but I was excited to get laid off because it gave me the opportunity to really go after what I really wanted, which was to go to beauty school. And, it was one of the first things I wanted to do before I went to even college. But because of all the noises and voices that I heard from other people, I went the other route, which, this time when I went, I found a job because I knew that school is also full time. I found a full time job that worked with my schedule, and it was at Wells Fargo, and it was a temp service. So I wasn't fully committed, which was great. And during this time, actually, it was 2006, not 2007. So I already gotten married. I had gotten married because I remember inviting the people from Wells Fargo to my wedding, and they showed up, and um, and when I was there, yeah, I went to school, both school and work at the same time. I graduated in 2007, I think in March. I don't know how I know all these dates, but I do. But yeah, so I graduated in March of 2007, and I started applying for jobs at, places that I wanted to work at. And I didn't really want to be at a spa, even though I just got my esthetician license. I wanted to work at MAC Cosmetics, and I applied there, and as I was applying at Sephora, I get a phone call from MAC, and I ended up getting a full-time position. And MAC at the time in Iowa, it was the only location, and there's only so many positions open. I think there's like only 3 or 4 full-time positions, and the rest were all part-time or freelance. I got very fortunate and got one of the full-time positions, but that didn't come without any kind of hate. So I mean, and I didn't even understand any of this. I was just being treated, kind of like when you're a newcomer to some place, and you just took the position of what others were wanting. And I remember having a hard time with that too, because I am such a non-confrontational person, and I was thrown into an environment where I had to fend for myself. And it didn't last long when it came to that. I was able to make friends. And this was like the first place that I made friends without it being attached to someone else. I was able to create this bond naturally and organically through my own self. Other friendships I've ever had has always been like through my parents, through a family member, through a friend of a friend. It wasn't something that I made where it's just me with no other attachment. And I look back at those friendships, and I'm still good friends with them. And I do credit it to being authentic, because I had to learn how to become friends with these people on my own, and not with a crutch of somebody else. So that has always been something I was really proud of, because it's always been hard for me to make friends, because I was just so shy, and sometimes I couldn't even talk. So I worked at MAC in 2007, and then I got pregnant, and then with Penelope. And in 2008, in February, is when I ended up losing her. And when I was working is when I also felt the cramps. I didn't know what those cramps were, but they were contractions. And I remember when I lost Penelope, I was already showing. And so MAC was a very fast-paced place where a lot of people came, and I would get questions and asked, did you already have your baby? And I remember just like losing it and crying, because now looking back, I had not processed my loss, and I didn't know who to talk to. I always felt so alone, even with Soli being so supportive, I felt super alone. But I had to keep going, because life keeps going even after you lose someone you love. And at the time, there was MySpace. And so what I did was I decided to write about it on MySpace. and people stopped asking me questions. And that felt so good for me because I caught myself in the back room crying often, and I couldn't do my job. And so in that very moment, I remember the power of writing things down. Um, and also the power of sharing, because in this time frame I started getting lots of messages from people. And so when someone actually messaged me about her scenario, I was able to take that and bring it back to my doctor, and we were able to figure some things out when I got pregnant again. So at the end of 2008, I am getting pregnant with my oldest son now, Sullivan. When I worked at Mac, obviously, with the loss of Penelope, I was so fearful. Every little thing that was happening at work, I was so cautious about. I was no longer the same person. Had many changes in my life at that time, where we ended up selling our, no, we didn't sell our house. We actually rented our house out because we could no longer afford the payments. And like an angel was just sent to us to really help us out in a time of need. And we ended up moving to my sister's basement at the time. And when I had Sullivan, when I was pregnant with Sullivan, the doctor did tell me that he was going to check me every 2 weeks just to make sure, you know, because we didn't have any answer on why I lost Penelope. He thought that if he checked me every 2 weeks, he'd find out, what happened, and we can treat it. And at 19 weeks, when I was in my appointment, he saw that my cervix, I had an incompetent cervix. So then we had to schedule an operation where they stitched my cervix to prevent me from going into early labor. With an incompetent cervix, it starts to open up, and that's kind of what happened with Penelope. And so at this time, I remember being on bed rest, and I couldn't go to work either. And then after I gave birth in August, I had I struggled with going back to work, nursing, pumping, getting, when you're in retail, you're working all sorts of hours. There's no consistency. And having to drop my son off to my mom and getting myself ready, working at a place like Mac, you had to your hair, your makeup, to the nines. That was no longer easy now with a baby needing to be fed, to be cared for. And so I struggled really, really bad. And I remember one day my husband said, "Do you want me to take him for you, like drop him off earlier to your mom?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that would be so great." And so that really helped me out a lot. And when I worked at Mac, I started realizing, and I saw it on my Facebook statuses recently, how much I missed my son. I missed being home with him. I couldn't wait to get off work. I no longer was whole at work like I once was. I longed to get home, to be with my son. And in December of 2009, so my son was about 4 months old, my dad had a brain aneurysm. And when he had the brain aneurysm, he was life flighted to Iowa City, which is about an hour and a half away from Des Moines. And I remember having to drop everything and drive over there. And, I was again in two different places at one time, where my mind was with my son, like, how am I going to feed him? How am I, the nursing, how is this all going to work? And I remember thinking I need to rush to Iowa City and be with my dad, because who's going to be there with him, And that I just remember it was all over the place. A new mom. I'm also a fill-in manager at this time because we didn't have a manager in place anymore. I was assistant manager at this time too, because I had got promoted, and I couldn't be there for my team, and I couldn't be fully present for my dad. It was just like I was being pulled in many directions. And I remember getting a message from a friend of mine at Mac that said somebody was talking about me, like, if she's going to be in the management position, she needs to be here. And all I can think about was when she was in the position that I was in just a few months before, where her dad had a heart attack and died. I did a thing, it's probably illegal, but I saw that you only got like 3 days of bereavement, and I was like, for your dad? Like, that's crazy. And so I remember giving her a week, and because I was salaried, I filled in um, her time. I didn't ask anybody to work her hours. I just was the one that filled it in. And in that time, I just remember thinking, like, not everyone thinks the way I think. I can't even get mad. So I remember thinking too, like, okay, I need to make a decision too. Like, if my dad survives this surgery, I'm going to have to stay home and take care of him because my mom doesn't speak English. And he's going to need like all the therapy and all the healing. And my siblings, they all had jobs that I was afraid that if they left their jobs, where would they find another job? Because they didn't have the education or the experience besides the job that they've done. And they, till this day, still work at that job as janitors at the school district here. And when I decided to be a stay-at-home mom and be a caretaker, I didn't realize what kind of responsibility that was going to be and how heavy everything was going to be for me. So at this point, my dad survived it. We were in Iowa State for 2 months. We brought Sullivan with me a few times, and we'll bring him back so we kind of went back and forth. It was a really hard time in my life, but I didn't even recognize it because at this point it was just kind of like, you just had to do what you had to do. And I didn't have a lot of options. And on top of it, my whole family dynamic started shifting and changing. My mom didn't fully understand everything, and I didn't know how to fully tell her what was all happening. So you have overly tired caretakers being mad at each other and not being able to know how to communicate. And you would hear things, or I would hear things about what my mom would say about me, and all I can think about was like, I gave up everything to be here for you guys. But then I started thinking that's what I was supposed to do, right? Like, it's just what daughters do. And if you are able to do it, you do it. And that was a decision that Soli and I made together. And at this time too, I think I was living at my sister's basement. So our monthly like expenses was just not crazy. So like the financial part wasn't a huge deal at all. And so in 2010, just a few months after my dad had his aneurysm, he had a stroke. And then I'm also pregnant now with my second child. I gave birth to him in 2011. And then in 2011, we ended up moving out of my sister's house. We ended up buying a house, moved my parents in with us. So learning to live together was very hard too, because now the roles are kind of shifting, right? Like, I am now the caretaker plus kind of like the mom, but like I still have my mom and my dad. They're like literally here. And sharing space together and learning to be a mom was really hard because how I saw things was really different than what my mom was used to. And so when I would, use my words, it was like, oh, I raised this many kids and you think this of me. And it was just a battle, like very hard battle. And our second son was not the easiest kid either. So like there's moments where we're like, we're just going to let him cry because like I don't know how to stop him crying. Well, my dad ended up getting diagnosed with dementia in 2012. And I remember him wanting to call the cops on us because he thought we were abusing our son when we let him cry. And it wasn't even like it wasn't like we purposely let him cry. It was just like we were tired parents too. And in a normal setting where there's no other buddy, like anybody else in your home, you would be able to do that and not be judged or critiqued. And so it was just a constant battle of like multiple worlds that I was living in. And then I get pregnant again with my third son, and I end up having him shortly after my dad got diagnosed with dementia. And during all these times too, when I ended up leaving Mac, I when my dad got better, even though he went through a stroke, I think I started freelancing in 2010, because at Mac I had a lot of regulars and they wanted me to go do their makeup, and then I start building like it just naturally came where I was going on like Saturdays. It became my place of like a serenity where I could leave my chaotic home of caretaking and be able to go spend a few hours in the morning on a Saturday with some of my makeup artist friends and just do makeup on girls. And it was girl time for me. It was like how when I worked at Mac, when I couldn't wait to leave Mac to go be with my son, it was the opposite now. Like I couldn't wait to leave my kids and my dad and my mom to be able to go and do makeup. So, and during that time, it was nice to be able to make some money to be able to, have something for myself. And after when I was pregnant with Campbell, my third, my dad just got like really better. And when he got better, a friend of mine decided, we should probably, the business partner that I had that I did the freelance work with, she was like, we should open up a studio. And I was all gung-ho for it because it was hard for me to do like trial runs at my house, having my parents live there, having children. And it was like you have to pick up your house to be able to have people come over. It was exhausting. So that idea of having a studio space made a lot of sense. It would be like a small room, and we would just share that space to do our trial runs because we were always hired out to go do the weddings on site. And I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden this idea came of having a blowout bar. And to be honest with you, I honestly didn't even think about, I don't do hair. She didn't do hair. And I really didn't care about hair. Like, I just wanted to do makeup, and that's all I wanted to do. And I wasn't trying to be anything, but I had a hard time saying no. I didn't have a voice back then, and I just said yes. I said yes to everything, no matter what situation I was put in. And so I said yes to it. And I remember in the middle of planning it, I had some doubts and some regrets, but I never spoke up. The reason why I had those doubts because I was really tired. Like, if I'm this tired and I'm not even in this space yet, when I have to have this brick and mortar open, I am going to have to be there. I remember thinking that way, but I never said anything. And as I reflect back, I wish that I would have said something. I wish I would have listened to myself and say, you know what? Great someone else can open that blowout place, but it doesn't need to be us. Small steps, right? But there's this rush of like being the first blowout bar. And, and I remember thinking too, like, oh gosh, like we have to spend money on finding a hairstylist that's going to be willing to learn the stuff, to be able to train our people that we're going to hire. It was just, everything just kept adding up and adding up and adding up. And I had a husband that was questioning everything, like, because he's in business. He's failed many times. And a business partner that didn't respect that because he failed many times. And so I would always side with her because I didn't know what else to do. And I knew that my husband would always, kind of really be that person that will always be there, right? So I look back at some of the things and I'm just like, oh gosh, like no wonder we were not getting along because I didn't know how to stand up for us. And like at the end of the day too, my business partner didn't have children. And I was trying to be 50-50 that thought I needed to be. And so um, I was missing a lot of my family life to build this business that we kind of fluffed to make happen, and that's the reason why it's not in business shortly after that. And I remember during this time too, I found out that I'm pregnant with my fourth child before opening this salon. Now I'm really in a pickle. I already signed a contract. I mean, I'm in it, and it's just like, gosh. I remember being scared to tell her too. We're in her house working on something, and I just leaned over and I just told her that I'm pregnant. And I remember there was a Facebook status I wrote, like, I wish I had my old life back, because again, I was already feeling that I was in the wrong space. And anyways, we opened up our salon in February, right around my birthday in 2014, and I had just turned 31. And then I had my daughter in April, 5 weeks early. And that was not what I planned for. So everything shifted. And not only did my daughter, was she born 5 weeks early, was my dad got into a car accident 3 days before she was born, 5 hours away. My dad was T-boned and was critically injured, and I couldn't be there because I was high risk. And so when you're high risk, you can't travel. And thank God I didn't travel, because I ended up giving birth. And during this time too, I couldn't go be with my dad because I had to heal and recover. And everyone that my dad traveled to the Cambodia New Year with didn't speak English. So like getting updates was really hard. And I remember getting that phone call of my dad, getting into a car accident. I was at the shop when I got it. And I don't know if receiving that news had anything to do with me going into labor early. I gave, like, let's see, I had a Monday appointment to get my cerclage, my stitch taken out. And that Sunday night, or that Monday morning at midnight, is when I woke up. I thought it was my water broke, but it was a pool of blood. And I'm grateful for that pool of blood, because that pool of blood let me know I was in danger and I needed to get to the hospital fast. And I remember when I got there, so many things were all happening at one time, where, I think there's about 15 nurses and doctors and all these people rushed to basically save my life and save my daughter's life. And it just took me back to this moment of when I lost Penelope, and the beauty bar that we named it Penelope, and we did IE for my business partner, the spelling of her, ending of her name. So I changed the spelling of Penelope. And so the full circle moment of like everything kind of happening again, the fear of losing another daughter. It was just a very scary moment. And when I got out of the hospital, we went straight to my sister's house, because my husband sold our house and it was closing in a few days, and he had to move everything out of the house by himself, because my parents were in this accident in Columbia, Missouri, and I was not able to help. And so I remember going to my sister's house right here, and we stayed at her house for a few months, and it was 4 kids under 4. And I remember her husband, which is my brother-in-law, I don't think he was really fond of us. And we felt that, and we didn't want to intrude any longer. So then my husband started looking for homes that he could fix and move us in until we were building this house, because this house was being built, was going to be built. We bought the land already. We had not, I don't think we began the building process yet. So, but slowly knew that we could not be at my sister's any longer, because it was taking a toll on all of us. And so we found a home that we were able to stay in for a year before we were able to move into our new home. And what is so crazy is that During all this time, I get a phone call from the doctor that my dad was not going to make it. And so I haul all 4 kids into the car and we head 5 hours to Missouri. And, one of my kids, the second one, Maxwell, he's our interesting one. Well, he saw a barn, a red barn, and wanted to stop. We couldn't stop. And he just bawled his eyes out and just kept crying, crying, crying. And I was nursing, and my boobs were just so engorged at this time. I was in so much pain. When I got to our hotel, I now had a fever. I had mastitis. And it was just a wild thing. And I couldn't go in to see my dad at the time either because of my fever, because he was in the SICU. And it was just a very surreal moment in my life where, again, I could not be present because I was going through multiple things all at the same time that required a lot of me. And during this time too, I am left with a business of all these weddings too. And I remember even going back to work to do a bride when I should have said no. But again, I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to really speak up for myself. And there was moments where there's an incident that really, I'll say it out loud here because I know some people already know about this story, but there was a moment where a bride is a friend of mine, and she had wanted to do a trial run. Well, the weekends have been so busy for us as a new salon owner, and I wanted to have the trial run done on a weekday. And I didn't say it though. I was just trying to squeeze it in this way. And every time I would ask, she would say, well, I'm having an appointment with this vendor or whatever it may be, but I am also a wedding vendor, but I'm someone she knows. And I was actually doing it for free. And I remember I said something like, I don't know who the F she thinks she is or something like that. And I sent it to my niece. I forgot what I did. I did something. But all I know is I wrote it. I sent it to her on accident. But when I got caught, I owned up to it. And I was like, yeah, this is what I really want to say. I mean, I didn't mean to send it to you, but this is what I really mean what I said. You definitely didn't even think about me as a wedding vendor because I'm your friend, right? And it was one of the first times I actually spoke up for myself. And then my dad came home from Missouri. He ended up surviving it. When I got to Missouri, he did, I heard that even though he didn't see me because I couldn't go in there, he did, when he knew that I was there, he instantly felt better and really pulled through for all of us. And when he was in the nursing home there to do rehabilitation, I get a call from my mom that my dad, they're not treating him well. They're not taking good care of him. And she didn't speak English, but she could tell that he wasn't being treated well. So I had to make this phone call, I went off the deep end at this point. I was cussing this lady out. I mean, I was not who I normally was, but at this point, everything that was being thrown at me just made me this angry person. And I just went off on a bride. Now I'm going off on a director of a nursing facility, and I didn't care. I didn't care if I was losing friends. And then in 2015, my niece got married, and I was building up this thing of I don't want to be in this business anymore, nor do I want to be with my business partner. And I'd come home and I would share stories with Sully, and he's like, why don't you just say something? And I was like, I don't know, I can't say anything. And so then finally, I don't know what came over me, but I came back from my niece's wedding, and that weekend, that Monday or that Tuesday, I just laid it out I can't do this anymore. Either you can buy me out or I can buy you out. So that was all. It just went, it went south because we didn't plan. And in business, you have to plan, and you better have enough ready for the months that you could not make it. We did not do that. And I try to save it. I try to keep it afloat. And then finally, I knew that in 2017, my dad died. And when my dad died, I knew like I needed to close it, right? And so I ended up closing the salon in 2018. And at the time, I didn't know what I was going to do, because now 2019, my kids are all full-time students. Everything that I've ever rearranged my whole world for now is no longer needed. My dad died. My business closed. My kids are all in school full-time. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. And, Solely recommended that I do real estate with him. And I was like, I never wanted to do real estate, and I don't see myself doing it, but I don't know what else to do. And I remember like looking up like spas. I'm like, maybe I like spas. Maybe I can go work for somebody else. And I looked at the hours, and I'm like, I'm going to still miss my kids, because for so long I was missing all of my kids' stuff because I was working on the weekends. And I knew I didn't want to do that again. And so then I was like, okay, what's your schedule? What's it like in real estate? And so I get into real estate in 2019. I become licensed, and it was, I enjoyed getting to know my husband as a now business partner in real estate, and then also learning from him, and then learning from other people, and being in an environment where like you're talking, having good communication. I didn't feel like I had that coming in, because I'm working in, artistry, where it's just like casual conversations, and I don't have to be like business. It's like, what is this, And so like I had to really learn how to speak up and negotiate and all these things that I wasn't really good at. Like I couldn't even speak up for myself. How the heck am I going to speak up for a client? So that was a fear of mine that just kind of kept coming up. And so, yeah, and I spent 2019 learning about the business, and then 2020 came when everything was uncertain and changed.